We'll call the meeting to order. Good evening. I'm not supposed to be up here. I'm the County Clerk, Gordy Holton. Thank you very much for allowing me to get you to the point where you've selected a temporary chair. I promise you that's all I'm interested in. First, I want to give you a little bit of a demonstration on the audio system. This is your first meeting in the newly reconfigured Shields room. So as you can see on this microphone base station, this microphone is lit up red, which means that this base station is on and you are hearing audio from this base station through the speakers of each one of your individual base stations, and then also in the public speaking area. It's also being piped digitally for the broadcast. You have the ability to turn on your own base station. So you now have the floor. So if you speak, everybody will hear you, but you will not hear yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Holton.
Okay, the microphones have significantly better reach than the old ones. You can't do this still, but you can do this. You don't have to eat it like you had to with the old ones. You all can hear me relatively well, I assume. That means that the digital broadcast can also hear you. That means the audience members can also hear you. Okay, so if your mic is on, you'll have this red light. You will have to turn it off yourself. You have the power to turn it off. The chair has the power to turn you all off. But unlike the old system, you'll need to get into the habit of turning your microphone on and turning it off. Okay, questions? Very good. We will begin with the swearing in of county board members. We'll do all 22 of you at the same time if that's okay, because you all are required to take the oath. You all have 2 copies of an oath of office on your desks. One is for your records, one is for the county clerk's records. After we administer the oath, if you will sign both copies, I will sign both copies, and I will return your copy to you before the end of the night. So with that, would you please stand and raise your right hands? And repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Alex,
Having been elected to the office of county board member in the state of Illinois, in the county of Champaign aforesaid, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of county board member to the best of my ability. Congratulations to all of you. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Alex.
Here.
Berkson. Here. Carter. Here. Coert. Esri. Here. Harper. Here. Hartke. Here. James. Here. Jay. Here. Kibler. Here. Kurtz. Here. Langenheim. Here. Maxwell. Here. McGuire. Here. Michaels. Here. Mitchell. Here. Petrie. Here. Quisenberry. Here. Richards.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Schrader.
Here.
Schwartz.
We have 22 members present. I am going to move directly to item number 6 on the agenda, selection of temporary chair for organizational meeting, and let that temporary chair handle items 4 and 5, approval of agenda and reading of notice of the meeting. Are there any nominations for the selection of a temporary chair?
I would like to nominate Chris Alex.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hartke. Are there any other nominations? Nominations are closed. All those in favor of the selection of Mr. Alex as temporary chair for the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Mr. Alex is your temporary chair. Chris, microphone, please.
Can't hear you, Chris. This is on?
Now it's on.
Now it is. Our first item on the agenda is item 4, the approval of the agenda and the addenda. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Esri, second by Mr. Quisenberry. Is there discussion? All in favor of accepting the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Would the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that an organizational meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on December 3rd, 2012, 7 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookins Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of swearing in county board members and conducting official business.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 7, the selection of the board chair. At this time, the chair would entertain motions from the floor as to the next chair of the Champaign County Board. Mr. Hartke.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mr. Michael Richards for our county board chairman.
Is there a second? Second. I think I saw Mr. Rosales. That nomination of Mr. Michael Richards has been moved and seconded. Is that to be taken on a roll call, or can we do that by voice vote first?
Or request a roll call.
Nancy?
Thanks. I have a question. Is it open only for one nomination?
The procedure is that a nomination is brought to the floor. That nomination is voted on. If that nomination succeeds, then we have a chair. If that nomination fails, then additional nominations will be accepted. That's my understanding of the procedure.
No,
Mr. Kurtz.
I'm sure, I'm not familiar with that rule. Could the parliamentarian please advise us on that?
Okay, the parliamentarian informs me that the selection of the chair, as any other action taken by the county board, follows the standard county board rule, which is a motion, a second, and then a vote on the motion. He further informs me, however, that as is always the case, if the county board chooses to adopt a different mechanism for any procedure, including selection of the chair, the county board can do so, again, by a motion, a second, discussion, and a vote. So I guess at this point, we have a motion on the floor for Mr. Richards.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir.
I thought we were under Robert's Rules of Order when we're under temporary chair instead of county board rules.
Statute applies first, then the board rules, to the extent that they contradict Roberts, and then Roberts. Roberts is only adopted by the board as a supplement to the statute, and the board's own rules or ordinances.
Thank you. So there is currently a motion on the floor for Mr. Richards and a second. However, as the parliamentarian has informed us, a motion to adopt a different mechanism of choosing a board chair, as I understand it, would be in order. Mr. Esri.
I would prefer to make a motion then that we open the floor for nominations from the floor and then vote on the, if there's more than one, if there's two, if there's three, if there's 22, we vote on the nominations from the floor, and I so move.
Second. Second by Mr. James. I want to make sure I understand your motion. It is not, I do not believe it would be in order to elect the board chair based on the plurality. My understanding is that a successful vote for board chair still requires a majority of those present. So if what you have in mind is to identify all the nominations and then vote on those nominations, I would think that would be in order. If you want a, 3 people for this person, 4 people for this person, that is probably not in order. Am I understanding your motion?
I think how you said it first, that, yeah, like identify all the possible candidates, and then you have a roll call on those candidates. On each one. Yeah, have, Mr. Richards has already been nominated, so have a roll call on Mr. Richards, and then whoever else, if anybody else is nominated, have a roll call on them. And granted, you have to have a plurality. It's my
majority.
A majority. But that's how I would move.
Mr. James, is that what you thought you were seconding?
Exactly, because in the past or other meetings I've been at, that's what we do. We open up the floor and everybody can make a nomination, and then you go through each name and everybody takes a vote on it that way. You don't have one and then just move on.
Okay, the motion on, there's a motion on the floor to suspend the rules to entertain nominations for board chair from the floor. And when there are no more nominations, we would vote individually in the order of nomination on those candidates. Mr. Carter, do you wish to speak to that motion?
Yeah, this is unusual. The board chair should be up or down vote. I'm starting on my 21st year, and I never see this before.
Well, Mr. Carter, this is the first time I've chaired an organizational meeting, so that makes two of us. My understanding is that if the board adopts this change, then if the board adopts this procedure, then there would be an up or down vote on the candidates as nominated.
Well, why didn't we just go in caucus together and select the chair?
Well, whatever.
We should have done this. Is this the procedure, then why didn't the Republicans and the Democrats go in the caucus and select the chair?
We had a procedure, and there's a motion on the floor to change it, and that's within the rights of the board to do so.
To me, this just, I don't think this Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'm sorry, Mr. Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Temporary Chairman. This isn't unusual. I have been a board before, and we were all chosen, and we voted on all of us together. So this isn't unusual from what we've done in the past.
Who did I see down there? Ms. Petrie.
Thank you. I have a parliamentary question. There was a motion on the floor that had been seconded, and now another motion has been put on the floor and seconded. Somebody needs to withdraw that first motion.
Hold on a sec. The motion to suspend the rules would take priority over the main motion, so it would be in order. I believe motion to suspend the rules is a priority motion. Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, I have I guess it would be a parliamentary question, but my understanding, if we supported this motion and had 2 or 3 candidates, we'd vote on each one, up or down, until one was selected. If we reached the end of the list and one wasn't selected, we would just be opening nominations again, or would we be in a difficult state? If we can just open nominations again, I don't see how that's different from nominating a person, voting on a person, nominating a person, voting on a person.
The difference that I can see is that you would know who was interested in running or who was likely to be nominated before you voted on anybody. And I guess I can see the mover's point. I would point out, and my understanding is whether we did nomination, vote, or whether we did nomination, vote, it's still the case that once someone has been brought to the floor and voted down, that person cannot be voted on again unless there's a motion to reconsider made, just like any other motion which fails. That would require a motion to reconsider to be made by someone who had voted against the person who failed. And I'm going to ask the parliamentarian to confirm that for me. And he is nodding his head. In the absence of a motion to suspend that rule. Thank you, Mr. Hartke.
Mr. Chairman, does that mean if the first candidate receives a majority, that will be the end of this vote?
That would be my understanding.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm going to ask Ms. Petrie for comment, and then I'm going to confer with the parliamentarian on that.
If we're in the process of changing the rules, I'd like to ask the parliamentarian if it would be more useful for us to amend the motion that's on the floor so that it's clear as to the vote procedure.
herding cats.
Are, I'm sorry, Mr. James?
Well, I sort of look at it as just like the presidential election we just went through. There's more than one person that might be interested, like you said a minute ago. So the names are out there. It doesn't mean that if you've already got your mind up that you may change your vote, but some of us would. And like you said, if I didn't know somebody else was interested and that was the only choice, that's the only choice. But by putting them out there first, then you call for each one. I've always been, every meeting I've ever been to of a corporation or when I've served on credit unions, you throw all the nominations out there and then you whittle it down.
Thank you. A comment, Ms. Petrie, to follow up on your comment. The parliamentarian points out that it's not his position to judge the board on what may or may not be useful. So if you have an argument to make in favor or against the motion, you would want to direct that to your fellow board members. Mr. Carter.
Yeah, this is very unusual. Now, we've been handcuffed. We can't even have a meeting, and I know this had to be talked about. This deal here had to be talked about. And what bothers me, that we all don't know the reality of these meetings until we get here.
Thank you.
Wait, I was on this board when we didn't have but 5 Democrats out of the 27. This never happened. We always went along with the majority of the next party and worked with them. Didn't say one word.
I appreciate
Now, now this come up tonight is a whole different program, which I'm gonna just tell you how I feel about it. It's not constitutional. And we ought to be ashamed ourselves trying to pull this.
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Carter. Are you done? Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
We should have, when we come here, we caucus, it should have been up or down vote on the candidate.
Well, that was
And that's it.
Was the motion that was made originally, and now there's been a motion to change it, and that board member who made the motion has a right to adopt a different procedure.
I understand that. I'm here sitting here listening that y'all having a meeting over that.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Ms. Petrie.
Yes, I move to amend the motion that's presently on the floor to state that at the end of the first round of voting, if there are more than 2 candidates put forward, that the candidate with the lowest number of votes is dropped and that we have a second round of voting.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand this, the 2 candidates will not be running against each other. We will have a vote on each candidate individually, up or down. If the first candidate gets 12, they become chairman. If not, we go to the second candidate that is nominated. Is that correct?
No.
Yes.
I'd like to point out that the last time we did this, there were 2 candidates nominated. We voted on one, and he was selected. Then we were done. So this is not inconsistent with how it was done previously.
Thank you, Mr. Ezra. You want to state the motion?
Well, I don't have a problem with, okay, Mr. Richards has been nominated, and I would suggest, yes, that we nominate or vote on the nominations if there is more than one in the order that they're nominated. If Mr. Richards should get 12, yeah, he's chairman. But if he doesn't, then you vote on the next person, you vote on the next person, however many there are. It's a way of opening up, as has been stated, I've never been on any kind of a meeting where the nominations aren't open on the floor and you move to close nominations and then you take a vote on the candidates. Like the first name would be called, Mr. Richards, since he's already been nominated. If he gets the majority, yeah, it's over. If he doesn't, then you go on to the next person and the next person, the next person until somebody does get the majority. That's every organization I've been on, that's how it's been done in the past.
Okay, unless there are further discussion, I think we are ready for a vote. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Another parliamentary inquiry. What constitutes a majority of the vote then?
A majority
number?
of the people who are present. So 12.
So it would take 12 to make a majority?
That's correct. A tie would be not result in a, the tie is not a win.
Okay, and the other question I have, right now, we're voting on Ms. Petrie's amendment? Or
No, Ms. Petrie's amendment was not seconded, so.
just for clarification.
So we will be voting on Mr. Esri's proposed change to the selection procedure, and just so everybody understands, a yes vote means that I will entertain motions for the floor and keep track of who is moved and seconded to be board chair. And then we will go through each of those individuals, and they will each get an up or down vote until someone gets 12 votes. If and when someone gets 12 votes, they'll be elected board chair. If not, then we're back to the drawing board. A no vote, a yes vote means you want it to work that way. A no vote means we do an up or down vote on Mr. Richards. If Mr. Richards is not elected, then we'll solicit another nomination. We'll have an up and down vote on that person, and so forth. So yes means nominate, 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 vote, vote, vote. No means nominate, vote, nominate, vote, nominate, vote. Mr. Keebler, keep it short.
Oh, I am. Because this is suspension of the rules, therefore it requires 2/3 vote. And I therefore think it automatically has to have roll call, correct?
Just ask for roll call.
Oh, I'll ask for roll call.
That makes, if one other person does it, it makes it easy. Okay, thank you. There will be a roll call. I'm sorry, we have a parliamentary question as to whether this is in fact a suspension of the rules or not, so give me a minute. Okay, we believe this is just a regular suspension of the rules, so it would require a 2/3 majority, and we'll do a roll call. Again, yes means nominate, nominate, vote, vote. No means nominate, vote, nominate, vote. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Can you cite where a majority of 2/3 is required? I'm sorry, I'm looking for that too. Rules?
I stand corrected. It is a simple majority vote. You can tell why I'm not the board chair. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alex?
The chair should be last.
I'm sorry.
I think I vote last.
Bergson? Carter?
Mr. Carter, we're voting on Mr. Esri's proposal on how to elect a board chair. Mr. Esri proposed that we ask for all the nominations and then we vote on each of the nominations. That's
Before I make mine, yeah, nay. Wow.
yes, sir.
I can't understand why we are making the rules.
Well,
Been doing it all the time.
I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, but a board member proposed a change and is within his rights to do so, so it is in order, so we're going to have a vote. Do you want to use Mr. Esri's procedure or the other procedure? Yes or no?
No.
Thank you.
Cowart? Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
No.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex?
Yes. I count 19 in ayes and 3 nays, so we will proceed based on Mr. Esri's proposal. Mr. Richards' nomination is on the floor. The chair would entertain other nominations for the position of Champaign County Board. Mr. Kurtz.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I've been on this board for 4 years. I've had leadership roles as vice chair and chair of ELOC. I've Democratic caucus for 2 years. I feel I have qualified with the accomplishments of many issues and legislation over the past 4 years, and I'd like to place my name in nomination for the chair.
Is there a second? Mr. Jay nominates Mr. Schrader, and Ms. Michaels seconds. Are there any other nominations for Champaign County Board Chair from the floor? Seeing none, in accordance with the rules we just adopted, we will have an up or down vote on Michael Richards as Chair of the Champaign County Board. Roll call, right? A yes vote is a vote for Mr. Richards, a no vote is a vote against Mr. Richards. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bergson? Carter? Cowart? Esri?
No.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Kibler?
No.
Kurtz?
No.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
No.
McGuire?
No.
Michaels?
No.
Mitchell?
No.
Petrie? Quisenberry?
No.
Richards?
No.
Rosales?
No.
Schrader?
No.
Schwartz? Alex?
Yes. I believe I have 7 votes in favor. That nomination fails. We'll now have an up or down vote on Alan Kurtz to be County Board Chair. Would the clerk please, or a yes vote is a vote for Mr. Kurtz? I hear a lot of discussion. Does anybody have a point of inquiry or a matter for the chair? Mr. Jay.
Recess be out of order, sir.
Are there, is that a motion?
I'd like to have a recess. I can put it in a motion if you like, sir. Yes. I move to recess.
The chair will recognize a recess for 10 minutes.
Thank you.
We still have 1 minute, but it looks like everybody's back. I will call the meeting to order. Ms. Petrie, do you have a comment?
Yes, temporary chair. I would like to move to suspend the rules for this nomination and voting process so that all of the nominations are put on the floor at the same time and that the voting for all of those nominations put on the floor happens at the same time.
Now, there's a second from Mr. Langenheim. I'm sorry, Mr. Esri.
Just have a comment, then what happens with the first vote?
We'll have to get there. Mr. James.
That was going to be my question. We've already started the process. We took a recess. Now we're going to go back and change the process when it's already started. I disagree with that, Patsy.
In the middle of the process.
Well, I'm going to ask the board to hold on for a second while we discuss the implications of that. Okay, Ms. Petrie, the technical issue is the one that was raised by Mr. James and Mr. Esri, specifically what happens to the nomination that's already been voted on. Because your proposal would create a new means of selecting the chair, I would feel that it would be most appropriate to start the process again and retake nominations from the floor. But I would encourage discussion on that. I mean, I don't think we can. I'm not sure we would be, I mean, the procedure being proposed is a procedure for selecting the chair. And we have, I mean, we were essentially a third of the way through the procedure that we had defined before. So I don't think we can, I mean, it's like changing the rules halfway through a vote, and I don't think that's appropriate. So I mean, your motion has been made and on the floor, but I guess I would say that my interpretation of your motion would be that if the procedure, instead of accepting nominations and then voting on those nominations, is accepting those nominations and then voting on those nominations in a different manner, that that process would have to include Mr. Richards because he had already been voted on. Okay. As I understand it, there's a Patsy's motion, which was made and seconded by Mr. Langenheim. If we vote to change the rules to adopt that procedure, then we would confirm that the nominations are the same as the last time, and then we would do what?
We would have a roll call vote with all 3 names or 4 names or 5 names in the vote at that time rather than doing it one at a time.
And if no one of those nominees receives 12 votes, there is no winner. We cannot choose the chair based on a plurality. It has to be a majority, so that's understood. That's right. Mr. Hartke.
Could we do that process then by process of elimination, have a runoff then between the 2 top vote getters in that first round of voting?
No. It's very clear, and hold on just a second. There has to be a majority. You cannot be board chair with fewer than 12 votes.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, but what I was suggesting is if in that first vote, no one gets said majority, and there are, say, 3 candidates or whatever, we would then leave it down to the 2 top vote getters and cast another ballot on between those 2. I mean, that would be the way to winnow it down in this fashion and get to a majority. I'm not supporting it.
I would say that that is either would have to be made as an amendment to Ms. Petrie's motion to suspend the rules, or it would have to be made as a motion in the event that Ms. Petrie's solution passes, is utilized, and does not result in the election of a board chair. Mr. Esri.
So Ms. Petrie, would your motion mean that you name, when roll's called, you name the person you want for chair? Is that how you're saying it? Because you're saying all 3 at once?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. James.
I guess the way I'm looking at Patsy, if we open that back up, all we're doing is throwing all 3 names out. We're going to go around, everybody's going to say who they want. And in my mind, to Mr. Hartke, then if the process doesn't work then, we can go right back around and we can nominate the same 3 people and go through it again, or nominate someone else. I could nominate you, Mr. Hartke, or whoever. So the process in my mind has already started. Excuse me. The process has already started. Basically, we're doing the same thing because everybody's getting a chance to vote. It's just now we're saying a name instead of yes or no. So we're going to be here all night arguing over something that may or may not wrap up pretty soon.
Well, I would make the point that from a parliamentary standpoint, we cannot just bring up a motion that is in exactly the same form as it failed the previous time. Now, in the event of a vote for one type of situation, I need to confirm whether that applies or not, and I'll do that in a second. Mr. Carter.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we played by the rules. We had caucus and selected our chair and brought it to this board. Now you get here and you go, what that means? What do that mean?
It means,
Now we get here and you change the whole rules, and I don't know why we even thought about that process. If it wasn't legal.
I acknowledge and share your frustration. This is not a question of legality. This is a question of what the board wants to do.
Well, what do we operate by if it's not legal?
We operate by the statute and we operate by the county board rules, and the county board rules allow board members to suspend the rules to determine how they want to conduct business. And that's what's happened in the case of Mr. Esri's motion, and that's what's happening in the case of Ms. Petrie's motion, which I hope we get to vote on sometime soon. Mr. Kurtz.
I'd like to make a roll call vote if this comes to a vote.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Esri.
I'd just like to speak to Mr. Carter. The Democratic caucus is not the whole board.
We brought it to the board for up or down vote.
Yeah, thank you. At this point, I believe we're ready to take a vote. Just to restate the vote, this would be a vote to suspend the rules. It requires a simple majority. Voting yes means we go around, we throw away the previous procedure, Mr. Esri's procedure. We go around the table and vote. We discuss who the nominations are going to be, confirm it's the same 3 nominations as before. Then we go around the table and vote for one of those 3 people and see what happens. And if somebody gets 12 votes, then they're the board chair. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bergson? No. Carter?
No.
Cowart?
Yes.
Esri?
No.
Harper?
No.
Kartke?
No.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Kibler?
No.
Kurtz?
No.
Langenheim? Maxwell?
No.
McGuire?
No.
Michaels?
No.
Mitchell?
No.
Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader? Schwartz?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes, the motion fails. That brings up, in accordance with Mr. Esri's procedure, and in the absence of other motions to change the rules, Mr. Schrader.
I respectfully withdraw my name for nomination.
I am sure that the board is willing to accept your withdrawal, but just in case, to make sure that we don't pollute this procedure any more than we already have, I would like to ask that a board member move to accept the withdrawal of Mr. Schrader. Mr. James moved. Mr. Jay, do you second that? Members of the board in favor of supporting Mr. Schrader's withdrawal? I'm sorry, Ms. Cowart?
Yes, I'd like to know if this is, if he's withdrawing, do this start the process all over again?
Sounds fairly good.
You have to.
Who is getting out?
Schroeder.
Oh, Schroeder, okay. It should have been just 2.
That's a good point. Okay, I apologize. We do have a process in place, which is the next item of business is an up or down vote on Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Schrader, I can accept as a point of personal privilege Mr. Schrader's announcement that he's intending to withdraw, but it doesn't affect the course of action that the board's going to take. So a motion to accept his withdrawal would be out of order at that point. So I apologize for entertaining that. I believe that the next item of business is and I'm getting confirmation from the parliamentarian that we believe we're doing this correctly. Mr. Jay.
If I didn't think you were doing this correctly, could I call for division of the House and see how the board feels?
The decision of the chair is that we do not have to take action to accept, taking action to accept Mr. Schroeder's recommendation is not in order. You can appeal the decision of the chair if you do not agree with that.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Yes, Rachel. Ms.
I
Schwartz.
thought the whole point of understanding who is on the floor before we make the votes is so we make informed votes. Even though we're not voting on Mr. Schrader now, knowing that he's off does change it. I think that if that's the case, we need to start from scratch. I think it's not right to have a vote that assumed that there would be 3 people to vote on, and then suddenly change the game and say, no, we don't have 3 people. That was the whole point of the process of doing one person voting, one person voting. When you said, no, we're going to have all 3 there, so you know who you're voting on, you either go with that, or if these, I understand we're not going to convince Mr. Schrader to change his mind, but we can invalidate or just throw away the first vote that was done with specific information in mind and say, no, we're actually voting on 2 people, and that's fine with me.
I understand your concern, and I believe that a motion to change the process, to suspend the rules to change the process would be in order if that's the outcome that you want. But in the absence of such a motion, we follow the procedure that we have in place, which is an up or down vote on Mr. Kurtz.
Well, is Mr. Schrader still in the running at this point?
Well, he's said what he said. I mean, his statement has no official action, or has no official, has no official weight. He's said that he wants to withdraw. You now know what everybody else knows. I mean, I understand your concern, but from a procedural standpoint, the process that's in place was an up or down vote on Mr. Richards, an up or down vote on Mr. Kurtz, and an up or down vote on Mr. Schrader. And unless someone, suspends the rules, that's what's on the floor right now. Mr. Esri.
I'd just like to say we've saddled this horse. Let's ride it out.
Ms. Cowart.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to kick Mr. Richards' votes out since Mr. Schrader has expressed that he's not interested in running for chair. I think it'd be a disservice to Mr. Richard to have a vote between him and Mr. Kurtz. When Mr. Richard took his votes, it was 3 people. Now it's going to be just 2 people.
So, Ms. Card, if I understand your motion, it would be to adopt a new procedure for choosing the chair, which would be confirming nominations from the floor and doing a vote for one type situation as Ms. Petrie proposed, but starting over.
Yes.
Is there a second? Ms. Schwartz seconded that. Mr. Esri.
Yeah, how is this any different than when we were just going to have one nomination and vote on that one nomination then and there without getting other nominations from the floor? The idea was to get the nominations on the floor first and vote on the nominations if there were more than one, and there have been.
Well, just as I understand it, if we adopt Ms. Cowart's motion, then we will essentially be reopening nominations. We'll be determining who the nominations are, and then we'll be going around and voting for one of those people by roll call. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just making sure it's clear what her motion is.
Follow up?
Yes, sir.
Well, from what I hear Ms. Cowart saying, and Ms. Schwartz somewhat too, to know who is not potentially interested, this board meeting started out with only one nomination, trying to pass that one nomination through without knowing who may or may not be interested. We're taking a step backwards, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. James.
Well, I would guess the motion in my mind is just another way of saying what Patsy said earlier, except in a kinder way maybe, but I would like to say that, we're doing the roll call. We know who the candidates are at this point. I would encourage this group to think about it. We can reword this many, many ways, but I say let's finish this vote and then see what happens.
Mr. Hartke.
I would just make a point that the reason that this body voted earlier to suspend the rules and take all 3 nominations in the beginning is so we would all have a clear idea on who our candidates were, and now that is being mucked up. I'm not stating an opinion, I'm just saying that that seems to be what's happening here.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz.
Just hypothetically, to tell you why it does matter, let's say I wanted to vote for Mr. Schrader, and that's why I voted no for Mr. Richards. Well, now that's not an option.
Mr. Carter.
And so I do need to
I'm
know, and
sorry.
I think those votes should be invalidated, including my own, because I don't have the information, I didn't have the correct information. So I don't think it would be right to go on these votes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter.
Yeah. Now, the previous procedure we had, bring our candidates to the board, you vote them up or down, the Republicans bring that candidate, or whoever they choose, and do the same thing, and we go home. We never got up here and changed all the rules like we doing now, and I'm gonna tell you, I haven't spent 20 years on this board for nothing. This will never happen no more.
I don't doubt that for a minute, Mr. Carter. I am not aware of this happening in the past either. Mr. Harper.
Being new to all this, I don't understand everything. I've been on boards for 20-some plus years. Any nomination was open. You took all the nominations, you closed them, you voted. If you want to keep changing the rules in midstream on every damn question, you will get nothing done on this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cowart.
Yes, when we took the vote, we were aware that 3 people were running. Mr. Schroeder had a chance before we started the vote to say, I'm not interested in being a chair. And he should have did that because he did not nominate himself. He was nominated by somebody else. And I think this would be wrong for us to try to uphold this here, vote for Mr. Richards when he started off. It was 3 people that he was competing. It was 3 of them competing for this seat. Now Mr. Schroeder say, I know I'm not interested in being chair. So that leaves 2. So I think that the process needs to start over to be fair.
Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Temporary Chair. I fail to see if we start all over how it's going to change. We're going to end up with Mr. Richards and probably Mr. Kurtz as the nominees. And so I would suggest we just go ahead and do the vote.
Ms. Schwartz?
Well, if those were the 2 candidates, I would have voted yes for Mr. Richards. As it was, there were 3 candidates, I voted no. That's how the process would have changed. I think it's unfair to mislead us, whether intentionally or not. I feel misled. I was told there are 3 candidates. I voted based on that. The game has changed. You had recess, you did all that stuff, whatever. And we're going to proceed with my vote that was based on false information. Again, it may not have been intentional. Nevertheless, this was false information. I voted based on false information. I would have had my vote opposite. I might suspect that other people's might have been the same way too. Since the chair is important, since we have to work together for the next 2 years, I don't think playing games and saying, well, we won't let you vote again even though we changed the rules is the right way to go. That wouldn't foster much trust.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Mr. Esri.
Yeah, this reminds me of Mr. Winkle dropping out of the race after the primary. We didn't get to go and revote our votes then. Well, it's too bad your vote then too. How's that different?
Seeing no additional comments, I'm sorry.
Mr.
I'm
Alex.
sorry, Mr. Schrader, did not see your hand.
Since my name's been brought up, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know I was so popular. I appreciate the sentiments. If I'd known that, maybe I wouldn't have withdrawn, but since I didn't really go to the Democratic caucus and ask for any votes or anything, I really didn't expect any votes from the Democratic caucus. So it's a big shock to me that someone would vote on a Republican. Being said, I withdrew my name because I think we need to move and get this process moving on forward. I respect my caucus for giving me an opportunity to do this, but you know, I can see what's going on. and I can get 10 votes, and that's all I'm going to see. And for anybody to make me believe that I would get more than 10, then I would buy you all the tea I could muster up from wherever, India or China, and we'd be happy all day long drinking tea, because it's not going to happen. But I appreciate and respect my caucus for supporting me. But I'm not sure I want to herd these cats, to be honest with you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I guess I would use my prerogative to speak. I believe that Ms. Cowart's motion is offered in good faith. I think it's appropriate that if we're going to vote, we know who the candidates are, and we give them an equivalent vote. So I will actually be supporting this. It was moved and seconded. So we'll now move on to a vote on Ms. Cowart's motion to suspend the rules. A yes vote means that we essentially start over, we take nominations from the floor, then we go around and each board member votes for the candidate of their choice, and we see if anybody gets 12 votes. A no vote means that we proceed with the procedure on the floor, which would mean an up or down vote on Mr. Kurtz. Thank you. Mr. Quisenberry.
Point of order, can you explain to me how that motion is different from Patsy's motion, which we all
Yes, Mr. Quisenberry.
I'd like to explain why I asked the question, and that is I'm concerned that at some future point it would be pointed out that we took up the same action twice, and it could be declared invalid.
I understand your question. Our determination is that because it's a motion to suspend the rules, it's essentially the board cutting to the chase and saying, here's what we want the rules to be, and that would take priority over the previous motions. Ms. Petrie.
With due respect for Mr. Quisenberry, there is a difference, because the way Ms. Coward has stated her motion, that would open the floor for any or all more nominations from the floor, so it may end up being more than just the two. Is that correct?
Thank you, Ms. Petrie. Would the clerk please call the roll? Again, a yes vote means we start over, take nominations, and then go around the room voting for the candidate of our choice. A no vote means that we proceed directly to an up or down vote on Mr. Kurtz.
Bergson? No. Carter? No. Cowart? Esri?
No.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Kibler?
No.
Kurtz?
No.
Langenheim?
No.
Maxwell?
No.
McGuire?
No.
Michaels?
No.
Mitchell?
No.
Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
No.
Schwartz? Alex?
Yes. I believe that motion failed. Based on the procedure we adopted as a result of Mr. Esri's earlier motion to suspend the rules, on the floor is an up or down vote for Mr. Kurtz as chairman of the Champaign County Board.
Roll call.
Oh, we have to have a roll call anyway. Again, a yes vote is for Mr. Kurtz. A no vote is against Mr. Kurtz. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bergson? Carter? No. Cowart? No. Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
No.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Yes.
Langenheim? Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Petrie?
No.
Quisenberry?
No.
Richards?
No.
Rosales?
No.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex?
No.
Oh. You were first.
Yeah. Would like to change my vote.
Yes to no.
We're working on that one, Ms. Bergson.
It's inconsequential.
Not for a primary, it's not.
Ms. Bergson, it's the opinion of the chair that the vote was already recorded by the clerk and that it's not in order for you to change your vote. Someone can make a motion to reconsider if the board feels the outcome of the vote was incorrect. Yes, Ms. Bergson. We. Yeah, she can't.
She has to be on the prevailing side. We don't even know what the vote is.
Okay. In order for you to move to reconsider, you would have to be on the prevailing, to change your vote from yes to no, you would have had to be on the prevailing side. And we have not heard the outcome of the vote yet, so would the clerk please announce the result of the vote?
Thank you. Yes, 13, no, 9.
Ms. Bergson, did you vote in the affirmative? Okay, the vote has been completed. The board's decision has been for Mr. Kurtz. Ms. Bergson, do you wish to move to reconsider? And as a member of the prevailing side, you're entitled to do so. Is there a second? Ms. Cowart? Yes, a motion to reconsider requires a second, but it does not have to be for the prevailing side. There's a motion to reconsider on the floor. Mr. James.
The outcome is still going to be 12 to 9. So even we're reconsidering one vote, or wait, 12 to 10, excuse me. So, yeah, we're not reconsidering everybody's vote, we're reconsidering one person's vote, correct?
A motion to reconsider, if successful, would bring the vote back to the floor and can be made by anybody who is not on the prevailing, who is on the prevailing side.
I'd ask for a point of order on that because I've never heard of that technique. I've heard that if someone votes and then they want to change their vote, they can ask to have their vote changed, but you don't re-vote the whole issue.
Well,
So point of order.
they're different. I mean, one is changing your vote, and my ruling was that Ms. Bergson's vote had already been recorded.
Right.
What I offered as an alternative to her was a motion to reconsider. And a motion to reconsider is applicable to any motion on which a vote's been taken. Someone who is on the prevailing side can move to reconsider.
The total vote.
The total vote.
Okay,
If
well, I didn't hear that.
If seconded, the motion to reconsider goes to the floor. The motion to reconsider has to be successful. And you're going to have to give me a minute here. Okay, we believe that that's a majority vote. So we will take a vote on Ms. Bergson's motion to reconsider the vote. Mr. Kurtz? Absolutely. A yes vote means we want to do that last vote over. A no vote means the last vote stands as is. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bergson? Yes. Carter? Yes. Cowart? Yes. Esri? No. Harper? No. Hartke? Yes. James? No. Jay? No. Kibler? No. Kurtz? No. Langenheim? Yes. Maxwell? No. McGuire? No. Michaels? No. Mitchell? No. Petrie? Yes. Quisenberry? Yes. Richards? Yes. Rosales? Yes. Schrader? No. Schwartz? Yes. Alex?
Yes. Okay, the motion to reconsider fails. It is a judgment of the chair that Mr. Al Kurtz has been elected chair of the Champaign County Board.
Thank you.
I would ask you to come take the chair.
Congratulations. Thank you, Chris.
I'm so glad to not have to do this anymore.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Our next, can I have the agenda, please, in front of me? Thank you. What's that?
I don't have it here. He's doing it electronically.
Oh, electronically?
I'm just waiting on it.
All these youngsters with electronics, I guess I'm still in the dark ages. Our next amendment, our next order of business is selection of the vice chair. I would like nominations from, are we going to do it by the same procedure? Okay, we'll continue on the procedure. We'll ask for nominations from the floor on who the vice chair will be, and then we'll go through the vote. I see Mr. James. I recognize Mr. James.
I nominate Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Schrader, do I have a second? I have a second of Mr. Mitchell. Discussion, or no, more nominations from the floor. Mr. Alex.
I nominate Mr. Rosales.
Do I have a second on Mr. Rosales? Second for Ms. Schwartz. May I make a motion as well from the chair?
No. Not generally.
Not generally. Does that mean
Hang on a
specifically?
second.
Hang on, thank
Give
you.
me a second, because I think in case of elections, there's an exception to that rule.
Okay, thank you. In case of elections, there's an exception to the rule. We're going to check that out, please. Thank you. I'm sorry, what? Oh, okay.
I guess it'd be me.
Well, who's the deputy? Oh, that would be Chris. Thank you very much, Mr. James. That'll settle it.
I think there's no exception.
Okay, thank you. I'm back.
The chair recognizes Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. I've always felt comfortable with Mr. Quisenberry. He may have voted against me, but that's not the point. The point is, I find it's very important, whether you have an R or a D in front of your name, that we have the best qualified people for this community. I've done that in the past. I will stick to those principles. The principle is a quality person in a quality position so that we can move forward on our business of this board. And I would like to nominate and hope he will accept Mr. Quisenberry as vice chair of this board.
Mr. Kurtz, I appreciate your nomination, and I would like to serve in leadership roles on this board, but I'm afraid I am not interested in serving as vice chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just felt that was necessary. Are there any other nominations? I have Mr. Schroeder. I'm sorry. I'm going to get used to this system, but with my hearing aids, this is fantastic. I want to thank Ms. Busey for getting us set up on this system. This is a great system. I can actually hear other people. I have Mr. Schroeder as vice chair and Mr. Rosales. Are there any other nominations from the floor? None. Then I close nominations, and we'll go to a vote. The first one was Mr. Schroeder. Do we want a roll call? Roll call. Excuse me? Roll call. Okay. On Mr. Schroeder, we have a roll call vote. Please.
Alex?
No.
Bergson? No. Carter? No. Cowart? No. Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
No.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Petrie? No. Quisenberry?
No.
Richards? Rosales?
No.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? No. Kurtz?
Yes. How many? May I have the vote, please?
Yes, 12, no 10.
Mr. Schroeder is vice chair. Thank you very much. May I ask for about a 5-minute recess so this older gentleman can hit 10 minutes? 10-minute recess, please. Our older gentlemen here have to make some restroom stops.
You have to take a vote on the motion.
Oh, let's take a vote on the motion, please. What? The motion was to? All right.
To recess for 10 minutes.
Oh, can I have a motion to reset for 10 minutes, please? Second. Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? No. 10-minute recess. Thank you. Who said no? Okay. Back in session. Please take your seats. Thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda, deputy chairs for each area of responsibility. The first vote will be for 3 chairs of 3 of the standing committees. We'll do finance, policy, and justice. My recommendations, appointments on these 3 are Mr. Quisenberry for policy.
Point of order, Mr. Kurtz.
Yes, sir.
It dealt with designation of parliamentarian.
I'd like to defer parliamentarian. We have a request in at the state's attorney's office for the possibility of them taking the parliamentarian position, but they haven't responded yet. So I would like to have defer on that item.
So moved.
I have a first move. I have a second by Mr. James. Any discussion? Mr. James?
Make sure everybody turns on their mic when they're talking, because I couldn't hear Quisenberry.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Keebler?
Kibler, but to confirm, this is going to the full board, correct? This motion's being deferred to the full board
Yes,
meeting.
to the full board, yes. Ms. Petrie?
I would urge that we put out a request for people to apply to be a parliamentarian for this board rather than using somebody from the state's attorney's office.
No. Thank you, Ms. That suggestion is under consideration. I still have to place my 3 chairs on the floor. What's that?
Vote on the motion to defer.
Okay, can I vote on the motion to defer? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries on the deferment. Thank you. Just a little bit tense here, so a little nervous. I promise that I will settle down here in a few moments. A lot of excitement here. Deputy chairs, as I said, for policy, Mr. Quisenberry. He has accepted that. For finance, Mr. Alex. He has accepted that. And for justice, can we have some order, please? Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Bergson for justice, and she has accepted that. Do I ask for a motion from the floor on that?
No, they're appointed by the chair, subject to approval by the body, so you use the vote.
Okay, it's subject to approval by the body. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Now we have the second appointment for standing committees. On Highway, Ms. Cowart. On ELOC, Mr. Langenheim. Now, this will be a controversial appointment, but I want to say first that in keeping with my principles and in keeping with the integrity of this office and knowing that it's important to work as a team across the aisle, to work with the best people I can find for each committee chair, I'm going to appoint Mr. Stan James for facilities. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Vice chairs for standing committees. You'll have to give me a moment here, please. Because of this unusual circumstance, I had not been prepared, obviously, for vice chairs or for liaisons. Had I been known that I've had this opportunity, this would have been completed by tonight. So I'm going to ask for deferment until the next COW so that I can confer with both sides of the aisle and put the best people in place for the vice chairs. Thank you very much, Mr.
Actually, you need a motion. It would be motion by Mr.
I need a motion by Mr. James moves that motion. Second, Lloyd? Yeah. Yes, second. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Petrie.
Just a point of clarification.
I'm sorry, say it again.
A point of clarification. You stated that you were appointing Alex Quisenberry and Bergson as vice chairs. Did you mean chairs?
Deputy chairs. They are the chairs of the standing committees. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any discussion on the deferment? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move number 13, number 14, and number 15. And our number 16 is review of per diem and mileage reimbursement. I had not discussed this with our administrator. Ms. Busey, could you give me a little bit of information on this, please?
Simply, and this was in the orientation materials that you received in the cover memo, the per diem for each of you at regularly scheduled county board meetings, county board study sessions, standing committee meetings, and COW meetings is $60. Your attendance at any other special committee meetings or other county board assignments wherein you receive a per diem is $45. And you will be reimbursed mileage at the standard IRS mileage reimbursement rate, which is typically published in January. That's the same as what it has been for you, for those of you who are returning to service. And the only other thing I would ask is if you are a new board member and you have not yet provided us with your contact information and information for that we requested for payroll, we would request that you get that in no later than the end of this week. Thanks.
Okay, that's all we have is a review. Mr. Quisenberry.
Ms. Busey, if a board member has filled out a form to say they don't want mileage reimbursement previously, do they have to do that again for the new term?
No, for all current board members, everything will stay status quo unless you tell us you want something changed.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the review of the per diem? All right, let's move on. Any other business? All right, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second by Mr. Keebler, first by Mr. Alex. All in favor?
Aye.
We are till the next COW on December 11th, Tuesday evening at 6 PM. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.